Hi, I'm Hank Zona, and I have a passion for wine. I grew up in a family with immigrant grandparents, and wine was a big part of everyday life. As I got older and my interest in wine grew, I wanted to learn as much as I could about it. And as my knowledge increased, I kept coming back to my roots with wine. Wine is something we share with family and friends. It's for fun, it's for pleasure. Now I want to share my knowledge and passion for wine with you. Please join me as we explore wine from all different angles on The Grapes Unwrapped. Hi again, I'm Hank Zona from The Grapes Unwrapped. We're here at Gas Gallery in Maplewood. You know, a few months ago I wanted to do this theme show on wine and art, and I approached Rick Hauser, who's the owner here at Gas, and what's morphed into taping a TV show here in the gallery has now become an actual art show that'll be going on for a whole month. The first show here we're going to focus on is me sitting and talking about art and wine with local artists like Felix Ockwell and Tara O'Leary and Lyman Dally and a friend of mine, Kevin Lynn. And one of the things we realized is that we had so much great material that we're going to be morphing over into a second show as well. So stay tuned. I think this is going to be pretty interesting. Hi, I'm here with my friend Kevin Lynn. Kevin, welcome to The Grapes Unwrapped.
Thank you.
Kevin is my guest for a number of reasons. He is the Northeast sales executive for the Wine Sisterhood. He's a Renaissance man. He's a musician, he's an artist, he's a photographer who's going to be contributing to the gallery show. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Thanks for asking me. Thanks for asking me.
You're here for a couple of reasons. First, tell us about the Wine Sisterhood.
Well, the Wine Sisterhood is an organization that is an online community that my sister started many years ago when she was an executive at Gallup. She understood that 75 to 80% of all purchases of wine are made by women or heavily influenced by women. I personally think it's a higher number, but we'll go with that. So my sister spent 17 years at Gallup. During that time, she developed the Wine Sisterhood. 25 women originally as a focus group. What do you like, what do you don't like, what's lacking in the wine buying experience. When she started to brand her own wines, she took it to social media, and specifically Facebook. She started this online community with that core group. That Wine Sisterhood, when I started working with the company in the field a little over a year ago here on the East Coast, there were 17,000 members, which I thought was spectacular.
Right, and how many now?
100,574 as of this morning, and literally 2 hours ago there were over 12,000 people talking about the Wine Sisterhood online.
We'll get right this minute, Kevin.
This very second, I got to get it out.
All right.
But the Sisterhood also responds to us as far as the charities are concerned, and especially one that I know that you're familiar with, Tough Enough to Wear Pink. As a result of that, we've raised over $12 million to fight breast cancer.
Wow, amazing,
So,
amazing.
important.
Now, labels are really important.
Huge.
To the Wine Sisterhood, to the company. Why?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we found out through our research, or Terry's found out through our research over years and years and years, is that you have 3 seconds to engage. If you don't know anything about a wine, whether you're looking at a wine list or you're walking into a retail store, you have 3 seconds to engage that prospective buyer. You have to stop them, you have to engage them. And we do that with labels. That label stopped you and asked you to take a chance. And you've taken a chance. The second thing, though, is there had better be great juice.
Right, and that's the point. At one time, marketing, especially with wine, was drawing you in to buy a bottle. Now it's drawing you in to create a relationship and to keep coming back. Because you want to make sure that the juice in the bottle really is representative of that label, pulls you in and keeps you there. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing today. We'll be back in a moment.
Cool.
Tell us about some of these specific labels.
Well, we have several here. We have 10 different brands, 32 different wines, individual wines right now. Today we're featuring 4 of them.
What's the story behind the Deep Purple?
Well, Deep Purple, the artist was given some direction that we are children of the 60s. And we asked the artist to do something that was very musical, very maybe Bill Graham Presents, Fillmore West kind of feel to it. This is 100% Lodi Zinfandel, one of the best areas to grow Zinfandel traditionally. So this is a 13% alcohol Zen.
So it's not huge,
it's not huge and hot. Exactly. We wanted something that's
accessible.
Yes, something that's a daily drinker.
And your wines are priced that way too.
And we have, we're in the business. So both of you and I have wonderful, incredibly special wines that we drink on special occasions.
Sure.
But we drink wine every day.
Right.
And this is the market, and these are the consumers that we speak to. All of these wines, you'll never find any of these wines for over $14 retail anywhere in the United States. So Deep Purple is 100% Zen. Purple Cowboy, I'm really, really proud of.
Right.
The story behind why we call it Purple Cowboy, early in Terry's career, there was a group of gentlemen that worked in the lab that spit and swirled and spit for a living, so they had purple teeth. So they called themselves the Band of the Purple Cowboys. My sister, early in her career, said, well, I'm going to have a wine company someday, and I'm going to name my first wine after you. 34 years later, one of them was still left alive.
Wow.
She sent him a bottle. He sent her a note back that said, not bad, took you long enough.
But it also speaks to the fact too, and here it is, that wine is very personal.
Well, wine and food, the entire experience is such an emotional connection, and when you understand that, either as a supplier or a restaurateur or a retailer, you'll understand that people are going into a store or they're going to a wine list and looking at things that it's made them feel great.
Right.
And that's what this is all about.
Right. It's all about connection.
The third wine that I have here today is called Promiscuous. It refers to the blending of many mutually attractive grape varietals in unorthodox combinations. We try to have a sense of humor about this. One of my most popular on-premise wines, it's a Zin Cab Merlot Petit Syrah blend. Okay. And then finally, the Good Daughter is a North Coast Chardonnay. It is 100% Chardonnay with a difference. We took 15% of the crush and put it down in small barrels for 9 months, and then at bottling we blend that back in. So you get it's not unoaked, but it's very slightly. Right. On the label here, there's a picture of a woman's hands. The top hand is my sister's hand. The bottom hand is her daughter's hand, and the idea is she's metaphorically giving her a lift. And originally, every sale of this gave a portion of the proceeds to sustainable farming charities. Recently, we changed that, and we're developing a new charity called Emily's Gift. We lost a very, very dear part of our family, and her name was Emily. She was an artist, so what we're doing is we're changing the backstory and the back charity on this to give proceeds to Emily's Gift. Wow. And we're going to identify elementary school art programs around the United States and donate money for art supplies so young girls could have the opportunity to enjoy and explore their world through art.
That's fantastic, because that's a big part of this community here where we're taping, Maplewood South Orange community. That's fantastic to hear. We'll be right back and talk about Kevin's photography in a moment. Hey, here we are at Gas Gallery and Studio. I've got a special guest with me, one of the contributors to the art show here, Andre Mack. Andre, thanks for coming.
Hey,
appreciate you coming to Maplewood.
Thank you so much.
We could talk about wine, Mouton Noir Wines, which is your wine company.
Correct.
I was going to say your wine label, but they're your labels too, aren't they?
Totally.
Yeah. So you do it all. I don't know anyone else who makes the wine and does their labels.
Yeah, well, it worked out for my pocketbook that way. So that was kind of how I got into it. It was more of that kind of tinkering around with things and trying to get ideas outside of my head and onto paper. And hopefully I got closer to that, so as it wouldn't be as expensive if I passed it on to a designer. And then at some point, I stopped passing it on to a designer and started putting it on the label myself.
The theme here is the intersection of art and wine. So you start dabbling in this just because you want to do your own labels? You have an art background?
No, totally. No art background at all. Cool. I just got into the label aspect of it. And then one day I'm like hanging out in Chelsea looking at some galleries and just kind of looking around. I was like, oh, hey, this is a really great piece. How much is that? And she said, that's $30,000. And I was like, wow. So I took a couple steps back just to kind of encompass all of it. And then I had this idea. It's like, wow, what I want to do is I want to actually have a wine tasting of all my wines in a gallery space, but with all my artwork, which are basically wine-centric artwork. So I started to make all these pieces, and somehow I found my way to you.
One of the things I like about art that really attracts my attention is art that has a real wit to it, and yours certainly does.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of telling a story. I've been submersed in that world as an insider for a very long time,
right.
And so there's a lot of these things are inside jokes. It's different. It's like you go see a political cartoon, like say in Egypt, but if you don't understand the politics, then it's not funny to you. So a little bit of this is a little bit too nerdy on some sides, but it's just the subculture that I kind of grew up in.
And that was the idea of the show, was to get people who are artists who've done a lot of wine-related work, and then to get wine professionals who've done artwork as well, to try to get that cross-section here.
Totally,
and I think we do.
It's all about layers, you know. So.
Kevin's a photographer, and you've taken some great wine country photography, I think, and a number of those pictures will be featured here in the show. How'd you get into that? Tell us about some of the stuff you've done.
Many years ago, when I moved to New York City and I was working my way into managing restaurants, people started paying me to shoot their portfolios and their portraits and things like that. My sister's involvement in the wine business inspired me.
Well, there's plenty of subject matter, right?
Tons of subject matter.
It's almost...
It's gorgeous.
It really is.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
So you can do it from so many different perspectives, right? And you happen to work mostly in black and white.
Yep, black and white.
So that is your perspective. For example, one of the ones that I love right here.
The Blessing.
Yeah, tell me about this one.
Well, this is in Amador County, California. I was shooting in the particular vineyard for about 3 days. The winemaker came to me during a lunch break one day, and he said, you know, if you come into this area 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, something really special happens there. And he didn't tell me what it was. So I got up at the crack of dawn, went there, and had my coffee, and I walked into this room. I'm literally standing on a mezzanine on top of a ladder in the dark, ready to see whatever happened. And when the sun rose in this room, it looked like God turned on the lights. And I spent about 3 minutes capturing several frames here. That's my favorite one, and I just absolutely love it. I think it's timeless.
It is timeless, because I looked at that picture and I said, I knew it was from California because you told me, but my first thought was, this is in Spain or Portugal somewhere. It has this old world feel to it as well.
That's what's wonderful about art, whether it's photography or anything, is it starts a thought process in people's minds.
Right. It's what you pick out of it, right? And how it impacts you, how it makes you feel, that whole personal aspect of it, that connective aspect of it. So, and that's why we're here, and we're going to be tasting some wine really soon. We'll be back. I'm back with our next guest, illustrator, designer, wild card, because you know every group needs a wild card.
Yes, they do.
Felix Sockwell. Felix, thanks for coming here. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Yep.
You do a lot of stuff, some really witty stuff, funny stuff. Tell me about some of your projects. What are some things you've worked on recently?
Well, some of the stuff I can't tell you about.
Excellent.
But other things are other things are local projects for the elementary school. Maplewood is Green, the Prospect School. I do a lot of local stuff.
Which is great. Which is great. One of the things we try to integrate into all the shows is some community aspect, whether it's a location or a site. And obviously your work, you're incredibly successful at what you do. Your work goes well beyond the borders of the community, but you also bring some of it back in. And I mean, one of the things that you've done just on your own, these graphic designs that you've come up with, the I Dig Maplewood and the I Dig New Jersey. Tell us about some of the other things that you've done, though, beyond the borders of Maplewood and South Orange.
Right. Well, one of the things that I associate with ideas and wine or yoga or jazz, things that flow well, and try to make it feel natural.
What do we have here?
That is a poster for the Burlington Jazz Festival. This other piece was for a friend who has a wine bar in Michigan. He has a nice wine collection there, and I did that as a sort of a personal gift for him for being a cool guy.
That's a really nice gift, and that's great coloring too. I mean, it's wine. It speaks of wine.
Yeah, it's fun to work on. And I also do some jazz stuff. This is an older one for John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk. I put out an album live at Carnegie Hall back in '05. A lot of what I do is connective, and there's an old Japanese mantra called wabi sabi, where you're trying to connect with something, and there's a continuity and wholeness to everything that happens in life and art, and that's sort of an underlying theme that I do in some of the stuff that I work on.
I think a lot of people who make wine but say the same thing, especially the small artisanal producers. You are connected to your subject matter, and any small batch wine producer is connected with their winemaking right from the very beginning. So it really is very much akin to the concept of what I think is a really good wine producer. I know you do not specialize in wine-related things. Like I said, you've done some of it. You've drank a few wines in your time. So we'll drink a few more today, actually, too.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about, really about the connectivity between the labels and the wine and the bottles, too, at some point. We'll be right back.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Now, when I approached Felix to be involved in the show, one of the very first things he did was he asked me for a profile picture. I knew Felix would come up with something pretty interesting, and here's a little bit of something that he's working on right now. What's your thought here?
Well, my thought was to integrate you into this other piece, and for the art show that we're having, we could produce a couple of posters for the show.
Cool.
With your likeness in it, and maybe we do something with the other artists as well.
And your original was called Grapes on the Brain.
Grape for Brains.
Grape for Brains.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, that works.
And so here I'm working on getting the artists' names into the piece.
So tell me this, what do you like to drink?
I like a Cabernet, but I don't go too expensive like you might think.
When you're drinking wine on a regular or semi-regular basis, most people aren't really cracking open the expensive wines.
I work on getting this a little bit better, but maybe we have a little something with your face, or we reintegrate it with some wine. But we'll do something.
Cool.
We'll figure something out.
Cool. Tell me this,
Yes.
how did you come to start painting about wine?
You increase your chance of success if you become known to how you interpret a subject.
Okay.
I interpreted muscle and exercise, that worked for me. Now I figured let's interpret wine, but in an unconventional way. I like to be the David Lynch of art. I like the strange.
There's darkness to it, but
Yeah.
there's also a wit, a sense of humor to it. So it's not purely dark.
No.
What do you like to drink?
I love wines from the south of France. I love Châteauneuf du Pape.
Beautiful.
I love the Languedoc regions. Also Italian wines. I like the Aglianico, the Volture wines, and especially the Amarones. You know, and if I had my last meal, my last wine would be, Amassi Amarone.
The thing I love about your choice of favorite wines is something I also see in your art. Those wines and your art has a real depth, a real richness and color, and there's a real, I guess, depth and richness in the subject matter as well. I mean,
Sure.
that's what I think when I think of Amarones, a real saturation.
That's what I'm trying to capture in the art. I like a sensual surrealism in my work. I also like it in my wine.
Tell me a wine story. When did you start your appreciation with wine?
1991.
As very specific.
1991. Someone had left a bottle of red wine from a New Year's Eve party, and I always drink water with my meal, so we ran out of water, but this bottle of wine was there, and I cracked it open, poured a little bit to have with my, little steak and little potatoes, and I tell you, it was like a revelation. The more I sip it, the more dimension it had. So it was like I never looked back after that. It was a discovery through a hard time that made me appreciate wine. But it wasn't until I moved to South Orange I was able to collect it. So,
right, and the nice thing about then having it accessible to you is you can develop your interest even further.
with a seductive beauty to a collection of wine, total. Just those bottles lying on the shelf, they're all little taste adventures.
Let's take a look at some of your artwork.
Start with this one. This is called Baby Bottle, and this is I did this as a demonstration for the South Orange Maplewood Artist Tour 2 years ago. Combining children with wine, I just felt was a natural fit.
I loved it when I saw it. That was one of the paintings that made me smile.
And Hank, this other piece is a favorite theme of mine. I
Right.
like doing
A lot of skeletons.
the skeleton and wine theme. For a lot of reasons, the fact that wine itself is sort of turning to vinegar. It's grape juice that's slowly dying, which sounds very, very sad. But in its sacrifice, it's one of the most wonderful drinks to bring you back to life. If you had to bring anything into purgatory, I'd say a really good Bordeaux would be the way to go. If everybody runs right, I tend to go left, and I don't know if that's always worked out for me. But
So you prefer left bank Bordeaux then?
let's see, is that Cabernet? I actually
Yes.
like right bank.
Okay.
I like. The Pomerols are
I prefer
my
the
favorite.
Cab Franc Merlot.
But
influence myself.
after drawing muscle for 30 years, it's fun to draw people without too much skin.
But even though you like to draw characters without too much skin, the wines you like are wines that spend an awful lot of time on the skin. Lyman, now I know why she smiles.
Yep, and why she blushes. People occasionally ask me to design their wine labels, so for a small fee, I will do that. And this was one that was for wine that me and a few of the neighbors had made. So what we produced was probably the most undrinkable, deadly wine you could imagine, and I immediately hated it and I called it Vin la Mort, that if you drink this you will die.
And even these really neat coasters that you did yourself.
Well, thanks.
I like those.
The distressed look wasn't intentional, but it seems to add for it, yeah.
One of the great things about being here in your home are seeing the paintings live, if you will. I've seen them on your website, Entourage.
Even the ones that feature death.
Right, exactly. This one's not on your website, though. This is
a new work in progress. It's nearly done. What I'm trying to do is bring a more colorful impressionism to my work.
This is the way a lot of people drink wine.
Yeah,
They're
I
at
believe
home,
they do.
They're dressed casually, they're relaxing, they're surfing, and they're enjoying a glass of wine.
My wife was the model. She's
Excellent.
researched something on the floor in our living room. I said, wait, let me get a picture of that. I want to do a
Great.
painting of you.
Yeah. So now this is done in oil.
Yes.
You were an editorial illustrator.
Yes.
And then morphed into someone who works with these rich oils, oil paints. How did you do that?
Well, during my stint as an editorial illustrator, which I still dabble in, but I had to do work very quickly, and I had to work in mediums that required speed, mainly watercolor and ink. I took a step back, and I said, well, what do I miss about making art? I got very good at being fast, but I felt I didn't get good at being good. So when I studied painting, and went to the School of Visual Arts for one oil class on the recommendation of my wife. It introduced me to oils. It opened up a whole new world, and I got over my fear of, that sort of thing. And it allowed me to explore, to put time into the work, too.
Lyman, thanks for having us come into your home here and look at some of this great stuff and really great house, too. We're going to see you next at the gallery.
Sounds great. Thank
Cheers.
you for coming in and visiting, and good wine in our future.
Appreciate it. Hi again, we're at the studio of Tara O'Leary, one of our participating artists for the gallery show. Tara, you were one of the first person I ever met who did wine-themed, vineyard-themed art. How did you get to start doing vineyardscapes?
Well, there was, with each series I do, there's usually a key moment when an obsession takes place. And I see something for the first time, or I see something in a different light for the first time. And one of those moments happened in Napa Valley. I was there with my husband of 1 year. At the time we were celebrating our first year anniversary, and we had such a lovely time. When you drive through Napa Valley, and how the carvings of the vineyards, how the land is just carved.
Right. On either side of the
Yeah, and it's exquisite and beautiful. And the way the sun was hitting one side of the vineyard versus the other side, and the long shadows that are cast from the vines. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. So I took a lot of pictures then. To be able to fuse both the architecture and the landscape was something that I found ultimately very appealing.
Did you go back to paint?
No, I took a lot of pictures, and I confiscated pictures from friends, and right, and I continued wherever we traveled to always take vineyard pieces. Like I was in Tuscany this past spring.
Now you're going back to Tuscany soon, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
And what are you going to be doing there?
This spring I'll be teaching a workshop in pastel for a week, and we're bringing 10 people with us.
Wow.
Geraldine from Geraldine's Art Studio is going to be joining us, and she's helping organize this. And we're going to be in a villa in Cortona. And
Sounds awful.
There's a studio. I know, it's gonna be a lot of suffering.
Yeah, and you know, and one of the things I love about wine, and it's probably one of the things you love about art, is that it's very personal, and it's also very social. And this is going to be a very personal trip for the participants, but also very social too, and a chance to really enjoy the art, enjoy the food and the wine, and just the whole atmosphere. And that's fantastic. Tuscany in springtime, that's going to be great.
Oh, it's life-changing.
It is, it really
fantastic.
is. We're going to be back in a moment, and we're going to look at some of Tara's art. So this was great watching you make even more of what was there. Why do you like working in pastels?
Pastels, you know, having gone to a 4-year art school, we had to try every possible medium. There was a night where we were told go home and, you know, do your assignment in pastels. So that was, I think, my 3rd year in school. So it came late in the whole education process, but I stayed up all night long. I just fell in love with the medium. It's the tactile quality of it. It's the hands in the painting, and not having a brush separating me from actually getting in there with my hands.
So you felt really connected to it.
Absolutely.
You had this emotional connection to it.
Right.
And as you're explaining that, I'm thinking this is really akin to a true artisanal wine producer. The winemaker owner who is working in the fields, who's really connected to the vines, who's involved in the winemaking process. There's a real connection in what brings you toward your art and what brings them toward what is really an art too, a craft of winemaking.
And I totally appreciate that. They're, you know, taking care of nature, and they're working with nature, and I'm in turn trying to honor nature in how I represent.
So what are you praying for then in the middle of your painting? Just that right inspiration on a glass of wine. That's good. And we'll talk a little bit more about wine in a moment.
Great.
Here's a silly question. Do you like wine?
I do. I love wine.
Okay.
You know, I like the experience of being at the vineyard and seeing the wine and having all of that. So
it is experiential too, and even tasting the wine at the winery, there's a romanticism to being there. There's again a connectivity. It's you know, being able to drink so locally. Speaking of wine, tell me what we have here.
Well, this is my husband Ernie gets together once a year with a group of men, and they taste wine. They decide that they want to create a wine, and they have a great time doing it. Well, one of the last batches, this one is from a couple of years ago, Ernie decided to create a label with him and his friend, Mark Reffner and Ernie Osley. So he created this label, and he took one of my paintings and made that the background of the label.
These facilities, they've got these clip art that you can kind of pull off and make a label. Right. And here he has a Tara O'Leary original for his label.
There you go.
What I'd really like to do is to save this for the discussion we're going to have at the gallery later on, where we talk about label art and the wine in the bottle. So Perfect. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. So this was a great first half. This was a lot of fun. It was informative. We're going to come back to you with another show to continue this. We'll see you soon.